All right. Welcome to the Philosophy, Science, and Religion podcast. My name is George Ortega. I'm here with Chandler Klebs, Slattery, and Poffo Ortiz. And this is part 3 of Who Gets to Define God. Now, we had part 2, and I actually haven't listened to it yet, so I'm not sure what was said, but maybe we can integrate some of those ideas into this one. And basically, where we are is, I think that Trick brought up the idea that for there to be a God, God would have to, I think, have intention. Or Trick, can you refresh my memory on that? What do you remember the exact words you used for that, or?
Well, are you talking about in our email exchange, or are you talking about in our last discussion?
Last discussion, yeah.
So, well, my position is that there's no evidence of intention, and that the process of evolution, or mutations and things like that, can all be explained by chance statistics, basically, by just probabilistic statistics that just relate entirely to the physical processing of those events. They don't have to. They don't relate to anything that we can infer some sort of intent, which isn't to say that there isn't an intent. So I want to be clear on that as well. I'm saying, when I say that these chance events aren't related, or they don't make the case for an intent, it doesn't mean that there isn't intent. It just means that there's no reason to postulate an intent for those events.
Okay, all right. So let's start from there. So just and I think I might want to start with the theme of the email, to explore that, relative to what you just described. So basically, what we're concerned with, like, we all agree that natural selection, is a major part of evolution. That, like, if let's say you have a species that subdivides into 2 parts. One part has a certain kind of like a development, another part, another subspecies doesn't. And, again, like with moths and color, just like that, one part of that species, one subspecies, will thrive better than the other, and that will lead to further evolution according to the natural selection. But what I brought up and what I'm exploring is what happens before natural selection kicks in. Now, before we go,
excuse me, George. There is no before natural selection. Natural selection is at play the entire time from the beginning of the first.
Right, I hear you, Poffo. Trick, do you understand what I mean when I say that?
Yes. So when you say before natural selection, and this is where I kind of disagree with Poffo. There is a before natural selection, and that's the mutation process. So you have the mutation process prior to natural selection. Then whether a phenotype comes about through that mutation process, which is like a characteristic of the creature, basically a change in the creature. If the mutation produces a phenotype change, then that change is then out there for natural selection process.
Okay. Excuse me. When I say natural selection, I mean the entire process itself. Like I'm saying it. I'm speaking more of the overall process of everything that's involved in natural selection.
We're talking about the same thing, but what Trick and I are saying is natural selection cannot kick in unless there's a phenotype difference between 2 subspecies, and that's all at the level of the mutation.
Yeah. So you can actually have. We actually have tons of mutations that occur that produce no phenotype. So it produces no difference in the creature itself, but there's these mutated genes that are an output that just
what I was saying
don't do anything.
before we started was that most mutations generally are not beneficial. They don't benefit the organism, and some do. And then the ones that do that are beneficial, and also as it's operating in its environment and stuff like that, like whatever is helpful, whatever is beneficial, like that. But it's not just mutation. I think there's too much stress put on the mutation. I think it's also just very small, subtle differences every time an organism, the specific organism, is reproduced and comes out a little bit differently, just a little bit different. Just anything like the way humans reproduce and
focus. I hear you. Focus.
I'm explaining it. I'm trying to explain it.
I know, but you're off track. You're off track. Listen.
Let him finish, George. Hey, George, let him finish.
All right, but
George, because I might say something that goes against your model doesn't mean I'm off track. It means I'm saying something that you possibly disagree with. What I'm saying is that when species reproduce and multiply, every single, Cousin Bill and Farmer Joe has blonde hair, blue eyes, longer arms, is fat, stocky, whatever. Right. Every single organism is a little bit different. So the little bit of differences, and this is an incremental process that goes on over millions of years. Those little bit of differences, whatever is beneficial, works and keeps them alive and helps them survive and helps them reproduce. And whatever doesn't work, well, those particular organisms, those specific organisms, they don't reproduce as well. They don't tend to pass on their genes and their traits. And so what you have is just a natural selection process. It's not random. There's nothing random about it. And sometimes mutations are involved, but most of the time it's just the subtle differences in each individual organism. That's all I was going to say.
Because you have both sexes, basically a male and a female, that share genes, then that produces differences as well. So you have a gene pool that produces differences that are outside of mutational differences. So yes, that's not, mutations aren't the only thing that causes the differences, though they are, there are a strong component when it comes to mutating beyond species and things like that.
Right.
All right, hold on,
Papa.
Let me respond. Okay. Come on. So, all right. What you guys got to key in on is that whether we're describing the mutations or the reproduction with the contribution of male and female, we're describing pre-natural selection changes in the phenotype.
Whatever. I would say it's all process of natural selection, but go ahead. If you're making the distinctions between the chronology of each individual organism reproducing, then fine.
Okay, so then let's say as an example, again using like the arm to wing evolution. Let's supposing that it takes 10,000 mutation, reproduction kinds of events, pre-natural selection, to get from the earliest stage of this change in anatomy to the stage where natural selection kicks in, you have, again, 10,000 events. Now, the question becomes, if we're not describing these as random, we're describing these according to Trick, I think what you're positing, that they're chance. Now, we have to be clear in terms of what you mean by chance. In other words, for example, like the first step of the evolution where, let's call it a bump, a tiny little bump appears on...
Excuse me, George. Wings do not come from bumps. They are the forelimbs of quadrupeds that become specialized in flight. Birds evolved from dinosaurs. That's where wings came from.
He might be talking about like the arm or something. I don't know.
But an arm or a wing? Because I've heard you talk about the wings many times. Yes, I'm
talking about a bump on an arm.
Then we're talking about amphibians. Then we're talking about the transition between fish and amphibious life into becoming reptiles, and that occurred over millions of years.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, my understanding is like the arm of whatever species it was, that didn't fly, gradually transformed into a wing.
the tiny dinosaurs that were left over after the extinction event, when the meteorite or whatever crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula and blotted out the sun, and everything died, and eventually the small mammals took over. But the small reptiles that still existed at that time, that had 2 arms and 2 legs, that had smaller arms up at the front, and some of them were already flying, the pterosaurs, and then the transitional, one of the transitional ones, I can't pronounce the name, but that had feathers. A lot of dinosaurs had feathers, we know now. Those animals are the ones that eventually became the birds of today, the birds that we see today.
The main point, George. The main point is things formed first. For example, before bumps even formed, feathers formed. If feathers were used for insulation, for example, and they had a survival benefit of insulation.
I hear you, Trick, and I could be referring to the bump of a feather. It's like I'm not like specifying in terms of what this bump meant.
And one thing I just want to say is that there was always a utilitarian purpose behind it. Otherwise, it got taken out of the gene pool. It got wiped out. There was always some level of utility. Listen, hear me out, Trick. There was always some level of utility to the different adaptations, which is what allowed them to persist. If they weren't,
but no. I mean,
in a strong sense, then it either stayed the same, or those specific.
You actually
traits
have 3 options. You have there's utility, there's disutility, and then you have benign. And a lot of the traits that come out, the phenotypes, were just benign traits, and until they went to an environment in which it became a disutility or a utility. So it isn't the case that they were necessarily a utility until they reached an environment where they were a utility.
I just meant the enduring nature of the different shapes and forms and designs came about because they were either helpful or they weren't hurtful. That's all I meant. They were either helpful or they didn't hurt you.
Guys, you got to focus.
Right.
Focus. We are homing in on a process that took place before there was any utility or disutility. Again, this is the beginning of the transformation from an arm to a wing.
Here's the thing, George. If say it's a mutation, if the mutation didn't produce a phenotype, then it's just that it'll always stay a benign mutation.
I agree with you. So we're just considering the mutations that ultimately led to the phenotype that then natural selection either rejected or accepted.
If it led to a phenotype, then it is out there for natural selection to work with.
Exactly, and that's the only kind of mutation we're considering.
Right. So when you say before, you're talking about a mutation that has a phenotype that already there's already a bump or whatever you want to call it, whatever.
No, I'm actually talking about basically think of the phenotype coming in as a difference between one subspecies and the other. In other words, so that's where natural selection is going to weed out the less successful of those subspecies. So this is the process leading up to that.
The process leading up to that would be a mutation, which the mutation would lead to a phenotype.
Yes, exactly. All right, so I think we're on the same page. So basically, now from the email exchange, I think we kind of were hypothesizing, perhaps concluding, that from the very beginning of this transformation to the point of the phenotype, where again it's pre-natural selection, there might be tens of thousands of mutations.
You're talking about tens of thousands of phenotype mutations?
All right, I think so. I think where we may be is we're actually trying to home in on what exactly we're considering. And so I think what we're agreeing on is that we're following a change that leads to a phenotype, but before natural selection takes part in the process. So,
Correct.
so all right. So then, and then the question became, and this is something, I don't know the specifics, but like, somebody was guessing that it could take thousands of individual mutations, I guess, mixed in with the male-female kind of reproductive influence, to result in the first phenotype change, because there might be quite a few before natural selection takes place. But
now see, this is maybe I
all
didn't.
right, no, I hear what you're saying, Trix. In other words, I think the way we're defining phenotype is that that once a phenotype change takes place, natural selection kicks in.
Once a phenotype mutation takes place, which is a single mutation, like a mutation that causes a distinction, an actual distinction, then natural selection could potentially take place depending on the environment.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
So, all right. So, but the point behind this is that that basically the phenotype would have to be expressed, it seems, in the two subspecies either having a different anatomy or behaving differently.
Right. So it could be a behavior, or it could be a color change, or like a spot on the forehead. It could be anything like this.
Okay, Poffo, you wanted to make a point or ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to have you maybe consider something for a second. Look at a Chihuahua and look at a wolf. Okay, look at a big timber wolf and look at a Chihuahua and put them side by side next to each other, and they almost look like a different species, but they're both of the species canine. Okay, how did that happen? That only happened in the last maybe couple thousand years of domesticating wild dogs and wild wolves and wild dingoes and things like that. Like we created that. Like we sort of artificial. It's called artificial natural selection. Like we designed that, and we selected the traits that we wanted in certain animals, in certain litters that came out, and if one had a bigger snout or a smaller snout, or if it was taller or shorter, and then we selected it, and we intentionally bred those animals like that to look like a sheepdog, an Irish wolfhound, a Great Dane, a greyhound, a Chihuahua, a pug, whatever, a pit bull, and you have all this biodiversity that's there, and that's just in a couple thousand years of human intervention. We're talking like millions of years. Like this is deep time that most humans can't even comprehend. Millions and millions of years with the pressures of the and of this incredible tenacity that's already built into life to survive and sustain itself.
I hear you. So but again, let's go back to the train of thought we were following. Okay.
But this is the train of thought. I'm saying this is how evolution happens. It happens.
Because Poffo, what you did is you introduced human interaction with it or human participation, whereas we're at a much more basic level. We can even be discussing this before there were any humans around.
No, George, this is directly relevant. Let me explain. The reason this is directly relevant is because both natural selection and artificial selection, what we call when humans breed animals specifically, both require there to be these mutations of difference in order for that type of selection to take place.
Chandler, the key point is that we're discussing the process pre-natural selection.
The reason George is making this distinction is because if there's like our process is an intended process. So if you guys are denoting that, then you're denoting the intention that he is trying to get to. So it's kind of defeatist to talk about that. We're trying to see if it's a non-intentional process or not. So that's what we're trying to get to, and I say it's a non-intentional process.
There is always a utilitarian benefit in nature. That is the intention. Is that built in are the instinctive drives No, okay, stop. I'm going to stop using the word intention. There is a prime directive, a natural inclination to survive and reproduce and live as long as possible.
There isn't.
All right, guys, let me focus you back in. All right, we're making assertions, right? And we're getting beyond ourselves. Right now, we're in the process.
That's not an assertion. That's an observation. That's what life does.
I agree with you, Poffo. I agree with you, but basically, we haven't made the case for that yet. At least along this line of reasoning.
Well, let me just say something to Poffo's, because it is relevant to this part of it. So when he's talking about that we have these intentions, he's talking about these phenotypes that are already out there. For example, an instinct to survive would be a phenotype. So that's after the fact. That's when you already have the mutated form, mutation or whatever that drove this phenotype of an instinct to survive compared to not an instinct to survive, which got weeded out because it didn't survive till procreation, whereas the one that had the phenotype of an instinct or drive to survive, made it to procreation more.
I actually think that all life forms have that, and some are just better at it than others. And
that's not the case. That goes against what I'm saying evolution is, which is a process that has no such intention. It's just that you have once you have a phenotype that the creature has a drive.
Let's talk about microorganisms. Let's talk about microorganisms.
No. We're not.
Bacteria.
No, Papa. We're staying with this line of reasoning.
But I'm trying. I'm saying that microorganisms have that intention.
I know you're trying. Papa, follow my lead.
Now hold on a minute, George. Now we have to start small, really, because unless we can see how the mutation and the natural selection works at this smallest level with these microorganisms, then how is it that we can explain the bigger ones?
Well, the answer is we're already doing that. We're not excluding microorganisms in this. I mean, like it's the same process of mutation.
Yeah, so, microorganisms don't have any drive to survive. They have chemical reactions basically. There's no.
I completely disagree.
Come on. Present your, we're following a line of reasoning. Let me get through this, then you can present this, okay? Because if you
can get through it, I can be quiet for the rest of the podcast. But you and Trickle just argue over semantics. That's what you did last time.
It's not semantics. Actually, part of it is semantics, but it's important. In other words, semantics is word meaning.
We haven't done anything about semantics yet. So,
I mean, you basically will end up just going back and forth, and you're not going to make any progress.
No, we won't. All right. So basically, again, this is all pre-natural selection, and let's say it takes 1 million years to reach the phenotype. Okay, so that means.
So this is what I'm not understanding what you're saying there, because a phenotype is something that happens right when you have the mutation. It's not reaching 1 million years for the phenotype. So I don't understand.
All right. Then I think I'm mischaracterizing the definition of phenotype. What I mean is like that there is a point at which natural selection kicks in. And in other words, like between two subspecies, there has to be a difference between them for natural selection to then, weed one out and perpetuate the other.
Right, and that difference would be considered a phenotype, but it doesn't happen in 10,000 years. It happens after a mutation that grants a phenotype. Basically,
all right, so I hear you. So so then let me change that to the there could be, I guess, thousands of phenotypes that progress from the beginning to the point where natural selection participates. Okay.
Yes, there could be thousands of benign, meaning they're not a survival benefit and they're not a detriment to survival that exist. And most of them are like that. Most of the ones that produce a phenotype, they have no survival benefit and they have no detriment to the creature. They're just there, and they never ever evolved into something else. They just stay there as a totally benign phenotype that exists because of a mutation.
Okay, so but we're not. Let's limit our consideration to this progression of phenotypes that were both benign and what's the word to use? That will eventually, be capped by natural selection.
Right.
So, all right. So then let's posit that there are 1,000, phenotypes that occur, in this progression.
Sure.
Now, so here is a point where the contention is that these phenotypes are occurring by chance.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, now so now let's more accurate, let's go back and define exactly what chance means in this context. Trick.
Okay, so let's just go into probability theory of chance. So when we're talking about a die roll, there's a 1 in 6 chance that a 3 will roll, right? So if, for example, someone says, well, I could use my mind and make that 3 roll something outside of chance, and we rolled the die 1,000 times, and if 500 times it rolled a 3, then we know that the die is rolling outside of chance. Because we understand the chance statistics. We understand the statistics of it rolling a 3 are 1 in 6, but it's rolling outside of that chance statistic. So there's something else going on there, and we can try to postulate, well, maybe it's an intent, or we could postulate something else like a weighted die or something like that. So we have to figure out what's going on. Why is it rolling outside of chance? For evolutionary theory, when a mutation forms, it's a chance statistic. When its interaction with the environment is just a chance statistic based on the specific environment that it happens to be in at a given time. It's all just chance statistics. And now if something happened outside of chance, then we might be able to invoke some kind of something. We'd have to say, well, there's something else going on with the process. It's not just the process that we see. There's something that we're missing here.
All right. So again, you're defining chance as the probability distribution of something happening, right?
Yeah, or a known probability distribution, observed probability distribution based on physical factors. So if we say the die roll causally leads to a 1 in 6 chance, like that is our epistemic limitation, knows that you have a 1 in 6 chance of it hitting a 3, then that is then right there we have that statistic, and we say, well, that is if something rolls outside of it, it's rolling outside of chance. There's something else going on. So if we had a scientist that was doing something to the die that we were unaware of, then that would be an intention that we would see. We would see, oh, the die is doing something else. Maybe there's something else going on with it, and if we could find out what that was, and it was the intention of some scientist that was putting some magnetic thing or whatever to make it go outside of chance, then at that point we would say there's something else going on there. Okay,
so let's discuss this first in principle before we apply it to the phenotypes and mutations. I raised this example in the email exchange. You have a basketball player that is at the foul line, let's say, and his shots are like 50-50. Maybe he's at the 3-point line, whatever, and they're 50-50. But he gets out to the midcourt and they've dropped to like 20-80. And then he's then up at for layups, and it's like 90-10. So are we, so basically in each case, there's a different probability distribution, but in each case, there's also intent.
What's the intent?
To make the basket.
No, I mean, what's the intent that drives the statistic?
No, the statistic is only a measurement of the probability of the behavior occurring.
Okay, so we know in that instance there is an intent to try to make the basket, right? But we know in the die roll, right? I mean, even if I had the intent of rolling a 3, like I say, I want to roll a 3, and I shake those die, and I roll, it's still a 1 in 6 chance whether or not I roll a die. So the intent has nothing to do with the statistical outcome of it hitting a 3 or a 6 or a 1.
I agree, and that's why I would contend that the die roll is an example that doesn't really reflect the accurately enough the analogy with the phenotypes and mutations. That in other words,
okay. The reason it does is because we don't know of like for the basketball player, we know that there's a basketball player that's trying to make a basket. Okay, so we know that intent is there. That's the purpose that the basketball player isn't trying to do. He's not trying to go 50-50, right? He's trying to be better than 50. He's trying to be 100 and 100, even though it just happens that he's going 50-50. He's just not that good. But yeah, so we know he has an intent, but we know that other processes we can judge the statistic without invoking any intent. And when we do that, we can just invoke the physics, the science of the matter for the output. And when you invoke something else like an intent beyond that, you're adding something to the probability that isn't required for the probability.
Trick, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Right.
Yes.
I have my mic muted for a while. Why do the laws of physics operate the way they do? It's just an honest question I'm asking you. Why do they actually operate in the ways that they do that allows for all this?
We don't know. We don't have that answer. So it could be anything. It could be
just name a few laws, right? Name a few just natural laws.
Gravity.
Weak force, strong force, gravity.
And these forces, they're destructive and creative at the same time. Is that right?
They produce the causality of the universe. Yeah.
They have creative powers and destructive powers. Like they're doing both at all times.
I don't like those words, creative and destructive powers. They have the power to influence.
Just because you don't like a word doesn't mean that
they change things. They change the nature of reality.
Things change.
Things are
from moment to moment.
Yeah,
whether you want to call it, you can't really call it a creation process. You can call it a consolidation of things. You can call it. But creation is a problematic word, so that's why
whatever. I don't care about words at this point. I'm just saying that I'm just asking you, do you have any idea or have any thoughts or any imagination that could give an answer to why the laws of physics do what they do to begin with?
If we knew that, then we would have that answer. We don't have that answer.
What if we looked at what the laws of physics actually accomplish and postulate and derive an explanation based on the outcomes and the forms that are brought about and the actions and activities that they engage in? There's no real conclusion, but I'm saying that
you'd be invoking a fallacy. You'd be invoking what's the fallacy that I forget what the fallacy is, but there's a specific fallacy for that. And you'd also be invoking an argument from ignorance fallacy, just because you don't know.
Not necessarily, because I'm not giving a specific reason why it's doing it. I'm just saying, is it illogical to conclude that when you look at the accomplishment of something that can give you a hint or a clue as to why that thing is behaving the way it does?
You can know why it's behaving the way it does. You can't know why the initial conditions are the way they were.
No, and I think when you said you can know why it's behaving, you mean you could probably understand the nature of how it's behaving and all the processes involved. But I'm saying, why does it do what it does to begin with? And we
don't have that answer. So I would be agnostic on a position of that. I would
Okay,
say
let me get this point. I know where you're at. I know what you're saying, but I don't want to forget my point. So the point I'm actually trying to make is, why would it be so illogical, or why is it a fallacy to look at what it accomplishes and come to the conclusion that what it's accomplishing is the reason why it behaves the way that it does? Why would that be so?
Because it's a non sequitur. There's nothing that leads to that conclusion. There's nothing that leads to the conclusion that there's a reason
except the result of the action.
I think I understand what Poffo's getting at. Like, for example, if we go back to the basketball scenario, we come to the conclusion that the players are trying to make a basket, put the ball in the basket, because that's what they keep doing. We see them making effort toward that. And I think he's making that same way with nature in general.
But that's because we already know the nature of consciousness in humans. Whereas a rock that's on the top of a hill that starts rolling down the hill for the reason of the wind, which for the reason of whatever, there's no reason to invoke an intention there. There's no reason to invoke.
You've brought up the rock rolling down the hill at least 50 times, and that's just in the podcast that I've been with you.
It's the simplistic scenario that shows the difference between our conscious thinking and just causal processes of physics. So causal processes of physics, we have no reason to invoke such intention.
But I'm not talking about inanimate objects. I'm talking about organic matter. And life forms.
You say you attribute human intentionality to human consciousness, right? Now,
yes.
Do you have an answer to the hard problem of human consciousness?
No, I don't think anybody does.
Right. So in other words, like with a human being, we can't even define the mechanism for consciousness or what consciousness is. So how is that categorically different from what Poffo is describing, or just natural phenomenon?
Because when we're ignorant of something, we shouldn't make a conclusion based on ignorance, because that's an argument from ignorance.
I don't think it's an argument from ignorance if I am extrapolating from all of the available evidence and everything is pointing in a certain direction.
You are making a non sequitur. You're making a conclusion that doesn't follow from the facts. So you have a bunch of these facts,
and then you don't think it follows from the facts. But at the same time, I'm giving you the evidence. I'm saying that life and consciousness itself is the reason why these laws are in effect, because that's what they produce. That's what they create.
That's the non sequitur I'm talking about. So the fact that there's conscious creatures in existence right now does not mean that something prior to those conscious creatures intended for those conscious creatures. There's no reason to invoke that. That doesn't follow.
Right,
one doesn't follow from the other.
According to your argument, the argument you're presenting now, we can't attribute intentionality to human beings because we don't understand the nature of consciousness.
Yeah, but we understand humans are conscious. We don't have to understand the nature of consciousness to understand that humans are conscious.
Actually, according to the argument, that's like saying there's no intention in anything.
No, there's intention in conscious creatures.
There can't be an intention in anything because you're saying that nothing is intentional. Everything is causal. Everything is just literally chance and luck and
conscious
random.
process. Everything's causal. But there's conscious processes that are going on, and there's non-conscious processes such as the rock rolling down the hill that's going on. So and we make the distinction between the two because we understand those distinctions.
But we don't. In other words, like with consciousness, we don't understand the mechanism behind consciousness, just like we don't understand the mechanism behind the laws of nature and natural intentionality.
We don't need to understand the mechanism behind consciousness to understand that consciousness exists. Just as like we don't need to understand the exact process of fusion in a star to understand that the star exists.
Would you say that?
But why can't?
Okay, go ahead.
That same argument can be used to natural intention. We don't need to understand the mechanics of natural intention to basically infer, because it's an inference, that if something looks like it's designed like a human brain, then it has to have been designed by something.
It's an inference that doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow from any of the facts. So you're making a illogical inference of something that doesn't follow from the facts logically.
The fact is that something, for example, is responsible for what we refer to as human achievements and human intentions. All right, we happen to call that something consciousness. Something is responsible for the human brain and the laws of nature, and we can call that, just as we refer to consciousness, we can call that the laws of nature or the intelligence of the universe.
We can't call it
in
the
other words, like
intelligence
consciousness as a term.
I actually agree with George.
But
we can't.
You have to understand, like with consciousness, we don't understand the nature or the mechanism of consciousness, just like we don't understand the nature or the mechanism of what created the Big Bang.
You're just calling it by different names.
So not knowing the mechanism. So right now you shouldn't have a theory. Well, you shouldn't believe in a specific theory of consciousness unless you have evidence for that theory. Likewise, you shouldn't believe in a specific process before the Big Bang unless you have evidence for that. So it's no different there.
Forget about the Big Bang, forward from the Big Bang. But then the idea is like we don't have a mechanism for consciousness. So then I think what you're saying is that we can't use consciousness as an example because we can't explain it.
No, we can. All right. There's a lot of stuff we can't explain in this universe, but we can understand certain facts. So we can understand that consciousness exists. If we can understand that consciousness exists, then we can use that fact. Just because we don't know the exact process that produces consciousness is irrelevant.
I actually think that we understand the process that produces consciousness, but what you can't answer is why. And that's
I seem to think it's just a physical process that of brain states that output consciousness. That's what I seem to believe. But there's the hard problem of consciousness and all this that we're still working on certain aspects of consciousness. We don't know how to produce consciousness other than biological consciousness that already exists. So we can't produce it in like artificial intelligence yet or anything like that. So we're still working on the hard problem of consciousness, but we understand that consciousness exists.
All right, let's go to computers. Do computers intend?
No.
Because
you can program them to.
Hold on.
Because they're just going through a process that at least computers today don't intend. I mean, in the future they might. In the future we might simulate in a way that conscious experiences happen and they're aware of things. So I think
that's just defining, because you're defining consciousness there. That you're saying that computers aren't conscious, but you could say that it has an intention to answer my replies when I ask Google questions. It's programmed to respond in a certain way, so it does what it's been programmed to do.
It doesn't think about it. It doesn't go, let me intend to do this.
It computates based on its operating system.
Right. It's artificial intelligence. It replicates intelligence, basically.
Well, okay. I would argue.
But does it do anything?
Yeah. What I would actually answer yes to about computers having intention, because I make the way I would put it is when we talk about artificial intelligence, like characters in video games, for example, gamers will describe them as this zombie is trying to kill you or whatever, they'll do that, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I think this kind of level of intention, which may or may not involve consciousness, can still be described as intention.
Well, then we can say that rocks rolling down hills have the intent of rolling down.
How many times is that rock going to roll down the hill?
It's the simplistic example.
I'm going to throw the rock at him.
Well, actually, Trick.
Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that rocks have the intention of rolling down hills?
I don't know what Chandler's saying.
Hold on. Let me rephrase that. Basically, Trick, like if our hand writes a word, we don't say that our hand had the intention. We say that our brain intended for our hand to. So in the same way, the rock doesn't have intention, but whatever is controlling the laws of nature has the intention to make the rock do whatever it wants.
That's assuming consciousness. So the
gravity
reason the hand,
it's not necessarily assuming consciousness.
Is because of we have a conscious brain that's controlling the hand. So we don't say that the hand has the intention. You're exactly right on this. We say that our brain has the intention. Likewise,
you can't separate it. You can't separate it from the whole, though. It's all one interconnected system. And I don't care if you call it conscious or unconscious or whatever. It's doing these things, and there is this overarching sort of profundity that's there of the fact that it unfolds in this way. The fact that these are the things that it produces: homeostasis, organization, metabolism, growth, adaptation, response to stimuli, reproduction. These are the qualities of life.
We get it. It produces a bunch of stuff, but that doesn't.
Why does it do these things? I'm saying, why does it do these things? If you look at what doing these things accomplishes, why is that such a stretch to say that's why it's doing these things?
Because why is a mistaken question. Like for you to say why does it do these things, you're automatically begging the question. You're assuming
I have the ability to ask why, then I should be able to ask why, and that means there are also answers.
No, because why questions are usually problematic questions. How questions are different.
Who says they're problematic? You? I think it's
why
pretty important.
questions automatically assume.
All right.
Well, okay, I have a question here.
No, I follow what he's saying. They assume intention. They assume a superseding consciousness. I get it.
Yeah, why has different meanings. There's different connotations to why.
Right. So it's problematic when you say why.
Yeah, I was going to say why is why a problematic question.
All right.
It's a problematic question because it assumes intention.
Trick, consider the following. The hand has no intention, right? Because the hand is following the directions of the brain.
Exactly.
Now, it seems logical to say that just as like the hand was the last, let's say, link in the chain of writing a word, that the brain is the next to last link. And so the brain, it's not really actually the brain's intention. It's whatever, is making the brain intend.
The human race is penchant to live and experience things. And then before that, it's all mammals. And then before that, it's animals. And
the brain thinks, oh, I'm going to write this. It thinks about the words it's going to write. And then the hand writes the words.
I have a really important point here. I got to get this out. Like there are other forms of intelligence besides cognitive, intellectual, psychological intelligence. You have instinctive intelligence. You have animals that react all day long without thinking, and they react spontaneously, and they have a genetic inherited memory of certain images, of certain the way the snakes might look, the way why do cats freak out?
I wouldn't call that intention. I'd just call that instinctual reaction.
I'm not talking about intention. I'm saying there is an embedded intelligence in their cells, in their genetic makeup that's been passed on and passed on and passed on. There's a genetic memory there, and all I'm saying is that's a level of intelligence without mental cognition.
It's basically genetics producing a brain structure that causes feelings and experiences that cause the creature to do something.
It's a genetic memory of their ancestors, having to run away from those snakes or whatever. So when a domesticated cat,
it's not a genetic memory. So it's
not that's a meme. What are you talking about? There's memes and genes and
memory is in a brain structure. Okay, memory is in a brain structure. When you say it's a genetic memory, you could take the entire strand of genes from some person outside of their brain or outside of their body. You could take just one strand and it has all the genes, but it has no memory in it until it actually produces a brain. So and once that brain is formed, that's when you have.
You're just getting hung up on words. Whatever you want to call it, the information that's encoded in the DNA strand is a form of information transfer.
It's a form of memory. I mean, in principle, we're not talking about memory that's stored in neurons. We're talking about memory in principle that's stored in DNA.
Yeah,
in cells.
I have an example of that. The
Cellular
way,
level.
yeah, the way that natural selection selects genes that make the animals more afraid. That's like fear information encoded in DNA, kind of a memory.
But it's not.
memory.
It's not in. Well, it's encoded in DNA when it produces the brain. It's not. When you say like when you have just a strand of DNA, there's
Trick. I don't listen. We don't have to use the trick. I don't care about using the word.
If you have a brain in a test tube, it's not going to like manifest its memory either.
Trick. I don't care about using the word or not using the word. Listen, I don't care about the word memory. I'm just saying I'm talking about the action. I'm talking about that there's information and intelligence without a conscious thinking brain. There's still intelligence.
Not intelligence. There's information.
Okay, what do you information?
You might be able to use information.
Why not intelligence? You've got artificial intelligence, you've got human intelligence, and you've got divine intelligence, and you've got DNA intelligence.
Intelligence invokes consciousness. I would say artificial intelligence is called artificial intelligence because it's not really intelligent. It's artificial. It's fake. It's a simulation of intelligence.
But you're begging the question. You're saying like that intelligence, by your definition, is only limited to human beings. And we're saying intelligence as a concept stretches beyond human beings to computers, to microorganisms, to DNA.
To my blood flow, my bone marrow and everything that's going on in my body right now.
Then you're just invoking the word for every. You're just invoking the word for everything. So you're saying that just one particle flying through the air and has intelligence.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Hold on.
Well, hold on. The same criteria that you guys use for this, you can use for anything. I'm talking about the rock rolling down the hill again.
You may be right, but we don't have to go there yet. But in other words, like, for example, like, yes, initially when the word intelligence was coined, it applied to humans, right? And like, I think back then, they didn't consider animals intelligent, right? Now we know that there's animal intelligence. And then they didn't apply it to computers. Then they didn't apply it to computers. So now we have like animal intelligence. We have computer intelligence. We have, DNA. In other words, like, intelligence, when we first conceived of it, wasn't a complete conception because we were just applying it to human beings. And now we know that we can extend the concept of intelligence far beyond human beings.
All I'm saying is that you have information that gets passed on. You have information that gets passed on that has a beneficial, it has a benevolent, beneficial,
Now you're going way off base. But
I'm saying that the
benevolent part is going way off base.
Trick. Why does your body heal? When you get cut, why does it heal? It heals because it cares about its own biological makeup. It is healing itself because it wants to continue its own.
It heals because that is what natural selection produced.
No, I know, but we can body. But we can describe that as benevolent, just like when the body dies, we can call that benevolent.
Yeah, sure we can. I don't understand this distinction where, we're talking about the same thing using different words, and Trick is just very picky about certain words being used, it sounds like.
Well, picky about certain words because he doesn't want to concede to any form of higher intelligence, and I'm saying the higher intelligence is embedded in nature.
If you're going to say that natural selection is benevolent and not look at all the horrors.
No. I agree.
We're not saying that. Nobody's saying that.
I agree with you.
Okay. Well, then you can't invoke benevolence. It's silly.
Why can't there be benevolent aspects?
Human beings try to be benevolent, right? Sometimes we succeed. Sometimes we're damned evil. That doesn't mean, so we express those.
There's no reason to invoke an intelligent process in natural selection. So when you use benevolence, you're automatically.
All right, now
the process that brought about your intelligence is not intelligent. The process that brought about your
intelligence in natural selection, Trick. You just moved it. We were talking about intelligence in animals and computers and DNA. So we can see natural selection as chance, but that's just one aspect of reality.
Yes. So we all agree that animals have intelligence. We all agree that humans have intelligence. We all agree computers have artificial intelligence. Yes. That is where we agree on intelligence.
But like the intelligence of humans is human intelligence. The intelligence of animals is animal intelligence. The intelligence of computers is computer intelligence.
No, the intelligence of computers is artificial intelligence.
All right,
AI.
artificial.
But what's the difference? What's the difference between the natural and the artificial, really? Because
the difference is one has conscious states, the other doesn't.
But that's an arbitrary difference. Big deal. The computer with its artificial intelligence can do things vastly more quickly and efficiently and effectively than we can.
I want to interject something really quick. Do you know what it's called when the computers what they're afraid of when computers go online and it becomes AI and it takes over and it self-regulates and it grows exponentially? It's called the singularity. And do you know what it's called? What it is? What we know of as the pre-Big Bang state? That's called the singularity. Isn't it ironic that the ultimate intelligence,
the ultimate
intelligence,
stretching.
That's a stretch. Can I finish my point? I'm trying to make an entomological point here that they call that the singularity when AI goes online and becomes self-replicating and reproduces itself and
using the same word for two different things.
That's confusing. That's confusing. The singularity.
No, guys, I can't let you slide on this. That's what it's called. That's what they call it. They call it the singularity.
But they may have miscalled it. They may be incorrect in calling it that.
I'm just trying to make a point that they've labeled both of these things. Okay, this state of incredible infinite density and potential, and this incredible state.
Words have ambiguous meanings. Words have ambiguous meanings. Yes.
Okay, so this has no meaning whatsoever. It's completely irrelevant.
There's no relation between the two. No.
All right. So tricks. So right. Here's the thing. So we've got a human consciousness, right? That causes our hand to act, and that causes the hand then writes, right? But again, we know that our human consciousness is not our own. We don't have a free will, so we don't have a free consciousness. So in other words, there's something beyond our consciousness.
We don't have a free consciousness. No, we have consciousness, but
right. And that's what I'm saying. So there's something beyond our consciousness that's actually basically causing us to be conscious of whatever we're conscious of.
Right.
So in other words,
it's causing us to be conscious, but that doesn't mean it's intentfully causing us.
Well, but here's the thing: if it's causing us to be conscious, and if it's also causing computers to do what they do, and if it's also causing animals to do what they do, I would think that whether we want to call it conscious or not, that governing entity or being has to be more intelligent than human beings because it's causing human beings to do what we do.
This is why we have to get into natural selection, because natural selection is the process that doesn't require any teleology to it, and it can produce these complex configurations just through a causal, non-teleological process.
But Trick, we can apply that same argument to human actions. In other words, we can do things by chance. We can do things completely by chance and get things done. But that doesn't mean we can't also do things by intention. It doesn't mean that because nature does some things by chance, it can't also do things by intention.
We know humans do things by intention, but we don't know that nature does things by intention. We don't have that.
I do.
No, we don't have the information to make that conclusion.
We have the same evidence. The same evidence we have.
There's no evidence. There's nothing that logically leads to that conclusion.
For example, if we design something,
except all of conscious life.
All of conscious life you could say that conscious life exists. Premise 1, conscious life exists. Premise 2, the processes of the universe produce conscious life. Conclusion, there was something conscious prior to conscious life. That is a non sequitur. The two premises do not follow to the conclusion. Logic.
Wait a minute. No. Basically, we can conclude that if conscious life is subject to laws of cause and effect and consciousness is not free, then it's not really owned by the organism. It's actually the consciousness of whatever it's making it do what it does. Every aspect of that consciousness.
The consciousness is in brain states. That's where the consciousness is.
But you guys get a chance. Just take a look at the information I just typed on the message.
But Trick, that's another thing. Just like we have to expand our understanding of intelligence, we have to expand our understanding of consciousness.
Yeah, but
I would argue we have to expand our understanding of nature. but it's almost
well,
the same
no, that's
thing.
a part of it, sure.
Yeah.
Well, the reason we have the concept of consciousness is because we ourselves are conscious. We understand what consciousness is because of that. So when you invoke consciousness as something other than what we know as consciousness, then you're talking about something else. You're talking about some other word.
But I mean, but we infer, in other words, like, that I think, therefore I am, right? In other words, that tells us the only thing we can know is that we're conscious. That means that I can't know that you're conscious or that Chandler or Poffo is conscious. So we infer that. So just like we infer that consciousness is a property of...
We infer it through common biology. We infer it through people telling us that they are conscious.
But a robot can do the same thing.
Yeah, and a robot can do the same thing, but we can understand that we programmed the robot to say something, or at some point we might program a robot and it might actually become conscious, and we have to. There's actually certain tests that people are working on to actually try to figure out if
all right,
the
guys,
robot
we
is
have
conscious.
to go back. We got to go back to definitions again. Trick, how are you defining conscious?
Excuse me, George, real quick. Before we get into that quagmire, real quick, I just want to ask, just 1 minute, I just want to ask you two a question, okay? Just real quick. Simple answer, one-word answer, whatever, one-sentence answer. Why is this important to you, George? And Trick, why is this important to you? Your positions, I mean. The position that you're coming from. If you could just answer it in a sentence, why is it important to you, George? And Trick, why is it so important to you to hold the position you hold?
Okay.
All right.
You want to go first, Sir George?
Yeah, to me it's important because, we live in a world where, to the extent that logic doesn't reign, that ideology and belief reigns, then that creates that's creating a risk of our entire civilization. In other words, I believe our world is better run through logic, and that's the fundamental belief. In other words, like it's not necessarily to defend the existence of a natural intelligence. It's to defend the logic that would lead to it.
Okay, so you believe that real quick, you believe that in making the case for what you call a natural intelligence, that will lead people, if you can verify that'll lead people to behave more logically. That's your motivation?
Well, that's one. In other words, like if people are caught up, like with the free will thing, people are caught up with this desire that they, like life is not going to have any meaning without free will. So like if we can teach people to overcome this motivated reasoning and apply their logic more objectively, then yes, we can create a better world in that way. And if we can teach people to like apply their logic more correctly in this case, I predict we could also improve the world in that way. Yeah.
Okay, and Trick, you hold your position, which is basically the non-belief in any inattention and any consciousness, that everything is chance and everything is random. For what reason? Why do you hold it so strong?
I want to believe in as many true things as possible, and not believe in anything false. So
we both have the same intention.
This is what I'm trying to get at. Okay. Trick, you want to make sure that what we believe is based in reality and it's true and there's nothing false in it. And George, you want to make sure that people make their decisions based on logic and reason.
I think
we're accurate.
But my answer doesn't exclude Trick's. I don't think Trick's excludes mine.
Right. I agree.
So then why are we arguing about it?
Because we disagree on what is reality here. We disagree on the fundamentals of reality.
I think you disagree on words.
Well, yes, and you're right. So now we if we're going to talk about whether consciousness exists.
I think we're disagreeing on more than words. I think we're disagreeing on certain fundamental things.
Yeah, we may be. Excuse me.
Yeah, you're disagreeing. You're disagreeing on the fundamental ideas, and you're also disagreeing on words. But right. I'm just trying to say that why do we hold these positions so strongly? And what are these positions? That's what's really important to me. Like,
my position isn't that there is no intelligence. My position is we lack the evidence to support the belief that we have intelligence. We shouldn't be believing that there's an intelligence other than the conscious creatures that have evolved.
All right, I hear you. But Trick, we got to get all right. So like this revolves around consciousness. we have to, and again, like if we're going to know whether God exists or not, we have to define God. If we want to know whether consciousness exists, we have to define consciousness. So what is your definition of consciousness?
Well, we have to invoke a bunch of words for this. For
Here we go.
Awareness, intelligence, qualia. So we have to talk about qualia, which is experience of like redness or smell or touch, all these sensory perceptions that we experience as a experiential state of qualitative state. So we have to talk about all these type of aspects to consciousness.
All right, now the next question is like, how can we say, or what evidence can you provide that your definition, of awareness, intelligence, and qualia is correct?
Because my definition is based on what we experience, and so it's based on the word consciousness.
That's subjective.
The word consciousness is derived based on our own experiences of consciousness, and that's why it invokes things like qualia and invokes things such as awareness, because those are our intersubjective experiences. Those are what we communicate to others as having.
Let's say we applied that reasoning, it's based on what we experience, to, for example, the shape of the Earth. We'd have to conclude that the Earth is flat.
What are you talking about?
And some people do.
Our experience of the Earth is that it's not an orb.
That's not true. That's not true. We have
our subjective experience is that it's flat. We look on the horizon and there seems to be no curvature. It's only
that was our subjective experience. It isn't anymore. Our experience is pictures from satellites. It's
all right.
We have a whole array of experiences that show that it's not flat anymore, and that's why we don't believe it's not flat anymore.
Right. So knowledge is emergent.
So it's not based on what we experience. It's based on the
progressive accumulation of knowledge, our expansion of knowledge.
So you're not referring to subjective experience. You're saying based on what science tells us. But again, even that. So
science is based on what we experience. It's based on intersubjective experiences. So the fact that we know that the Earth isn't flat is because we've traveled around the Earth. It's because we have satellite pictures of it from space that show it's a sphere. We have a number of empirical evidence, observable empirical evidence that shows that it's not flat, even if it looks flat from one horizon.
Can I take a certain perspective or try a trajectory here? Trick, why are you so against the Gaia hypothesis in particular?
Because there's no evidence for it.
What I mean, others would disagree. James Lovelock and many, many more would say that.
Yeah, but most evolutionary biologists explain that there's a non-teleological process that happens for evolution. And if that's the case, then you don't. And when you say Gaia hypothesis, there's a whole sect of Gaia hypothesis that you could talk about.
Let's say the general overarching idea or theme that the Earth is a living system, that it's one self-contained, self-organizing, biological system, that all parts are interrelated and it has all the, like those 7 qualities I listed before. It has all the qualities of a living organism.
See, I don't think it has the qualities of a living organism.
All right, guys.
I don't think the Gaia hypothesis.
I'm not saying that. I know you don't believe in it. I'm asking. I'm saying what's the main reason why you're so opposed to it? Because the same reasons that you would give for that is the same reason I believe why you would be opposed to sort of Georgianized sort of parallel opinion or perspective on this.
It is the same reason. There's no evidence for it.
All right. Trick, I want to go back to like your definition of consciousness. You said like awareness, intelligence, qualia. I will challenge 2 of those. Awareness and intelligence, I would contest, are both manifested by single-celled organisms.
What do you mean?
I mean, for example, single-celled organisms are aware of the food that they find and consume. They're aware of light and dark. They're aware of heat.
There's no evidence for that. There's no evidence. Okay, let's talk about chemical reactions. When you mix two chemicals together in a test tube and it foams up, are those chemicals aware of it?
And you claim to not be a reductionist?
Slow down. Trick, wait a minute. Yeah, like
this is reductionism.
Because a cell that propels away from something or doesn't propel away from something is a specific chemical reaction.
And so are we.
We're chemical reactions too.
Everything we do,
I agree.
Can be reduced to chemicals.
Yes. But
brain states are chemical reactions.
Are because of conscious experiences that are due to a central.
Those are different levels.
System.
Those are just different levels of awareness.
A central nervous system and brain state. Okay.
The cell has a different organism. The cell has a different mechanism for that.
Then so does two chemicals in a tube. You can't.
Right, but I'm not going to contest the chemicals because that's going from life to inert matter, right? So but I can contest. In other words, yes, cells are aware of their environment. Cells do things that we would have to describe as intelligent.
I disagree. They run through a chemical process that's no different than the two chemicals being poured into a tube and having a reaction.
But so do we. It's the same way our chemicals guide our.
You put two people in a room and they're not the same. There's not the same personality type. There's going to be a reaction. They're going to either repel or attract each other.
You're talking about something. Okay, you're talking about two conscious creatures. That's different. So we don't have any evidence that that plants are conscious. We don't have evidence that single-celled organisms are conscious. We don't have.
I don't know where you're getting your science from. I think all of that has been established.
Yeah, if we're defining consciousness as awareness and intelligence, I think we do have evidence.
It's not the same level as human consciousness. Obviously, it goes up. It goes, awareness, sentience, sapience, like you said, qualia, and consciousness. But it's all just different levels of consciousness.
Okay, well then you're saying everything is conscious. You're invoking panpsychism.
No, not exactly. I'm saying everything has a level of awareness, and that awareness, you could also exchange the word for consciousness, but that level of awareness, I choose to use awareness, it grows and it manifests differently and it develops.
This is where semantics become important. What are you talking about when you say awareness?
We've had this conversation before. The ability for a chunk of matter or energy or whatever to react to other aspects of energy and matter around it, for the response, the response to stimuli.
Right. So the two chemicals that in this test tube put together and have a stimuli, have a reaction, are aware of that. Is what you're saying?
They are not aware on a human cognitive level, but they are aware.
I'm just asking you the way you're using awareness.
They're aware in their own way. Yeah, that's the basis, most basic level of awareness. Yeah.
Okay, so I wouldn't I wouldn't say that type of awareness means anything. It's a meaningless.
What do you mean it doesn't mean anything? That's the beginning. That awareness is the beginning. It's the genesis of everything.
We have conscious awareness.
We have five senses.
A chess program.
That's how
we actually have more than five, but yeah.
All right, but basically, our awareness trick is we feel things, we smell things, we taste things, and so these single-celled organisms, they detect things.
They are
whatever
aware.
Sense
they are
have.
aware of it. Okay,
they are aware.
They're not. Okay. I'm redefining. Listen, I'm defining awareness.
You're redefining awareness. Yes,
no,
I understand.
Look up awareness in the definition. He's not redefining awareness. Check it out in a dictionary.
Let's look it up right now.
I'm trying to say that they're I'm not personifying the single cell paramecium whatever. I'm saying that all energy and matter is aware of the other aspects of energy and matter around it, and because it responds to it.
The first definition that comes up for awareness is knowledge or perception of a situation or fact. There's
perception.
No knowledge.
Perception is a good word.
Perception.
There's no perception. Okay, let's look up perception now. Let's look up perception now.
An amoeba perceives food and digests it.
Perception,
and
the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through
yes.
the senses.
A higher level. It's a higher level of awareness.
So an amoeba senses things. You can't tell me that an amoeba doesn't have any senses.
It doesn't have any senses. It does have senses. It doesn't have the 5 senses we have, but it has the sense of heat and cold. It has the sense of light and dark.
I think light. Yeah, I think it perceives.
So you're basically saying that the chemicals in the test tube have senses.
And I'm basically saying the chemicals in our brain have senses.
No. I'm asking you. You're basically saying that the chemicals.
Yes, we can reduce it down to chemicals. We can reduce our hearing down to chemicals.
I wouldn't call it senses. I would say it reacts.
Down to chemicals.
It
reacts, but that doesn't mean it has perception.
Reaction and response is the basis for life. That's what begins that trajectory of those increments going up from awareness to sentience to sapience to consciousness.
So those words I'm perfectly fine with. Reaction and what was the other?
Okay, so let's just get this straight. I'm not a panpsychist. I'm just saying that there are many levels of awareness. So and it leads up to consciousness.
I'm saying awareness isn't a word we should be using there. We should
What word
be
would
using,
you? What word?
We should be using reaction. We should be using.
Okay, hold on, Trick. Hold on. So let's take it from the microscopic level. Let's use the words that you would use, starting with the single-celled organisms, and let's describe their level, those levels of what we would call awareness. Let's use your words and go ahead and describe going all the way up taxonomy and to all the way up to like a human being, to a primate. Go ahead.
Anything prior to a central nervous system and brain has reactions.
Okay, and then the next stage up in terms of awareness.
In terms of awareness, you might see consciousness. You might have qualia. You might have intelligence. You might have all these other factors that fall under consciousness.
That's all we're saying. I'm saying that all things have a kind of level of awareness.
I'm saying prior to the brain and central nervous system, you don't have any of that other stuff.
You're telling me that plants are not aware of the sunlight and that's why they turn toward the sun. Okay, they reach their roots down in the earth.
You could create a solar panel that turns towards the sun. That doesn't mean it's aware of the sun.
I'm talking about a solar panel.
Trick, let me your argument.
It's not a red herring. It's an analogy. It's the same thing.
Trick,
I'm asking you.
Hold on, Papa. Hold on. Trick, you're saying that human beings have consciousness because we have a mechanism that explains it, whereas like a single-celled organism doesn't have consciousness because we don't know of a mechanism that explains it.
I'm saying we have no evidence that there's
right. All right, but
think
of this, Trick. Okay, if you with your reductionist model, if you take our consciousness and you realize we don't have a mechanism for consciousness, we don't have any more of a mechanism for our awareness and consciousness.
No. We have we know that the brain produces consciousness.
How does matter turn into consciousness? How do we explain the hard problem?
We have tons of neuroscience that points to the brain relating to consciousness. We can even turn off consciousness.
No, it's not about relating. It's the mechanism for consciousness. In other words,
it doesn't matter. We don't need to know the mechanism. See, this is where you're getting confused. We don't need to know the mechanism of something to know that the something is produced by something else.
Well, that's my point.
Excuse me, George. Did you mean in the evolution, like from the single-celled organism
he said,
all the way up to the?
Said, we don't need to know the mechanism of something to know what it does. And so, like, you apply that that contention.
To know that it's produced by something. So we can say that consciousness is produced by the brain because we have a ton of evidence that supports.
I have a way to reconcile this. Hold on a second. Would you say that the paramecium or the microorganism, the bacterium, is self-aware? Would anybody say that? Would you say that?
I think it may be. I don't know. Could be.
Okay.
No. I wouldn't say it's self-aware. No.
Okay. I would say that it's not self-aware, but I would say that it has a level of awareness, and so that in so much that it reacts to its environment.
Now, why don't you just say it just reacts to its environment? Why would you?
Okay, that's because say that. That's fine. I'm just saying that's the bare minimum. That's the
define
most
react. If we go to defining react, I bet you we'll come up with awareness as one of its definitions.
No, two chemicals in a test tube react.
there's different definitions of react.
It's regulated.
I mean,
it's regulated to an animate
in chemistry.
object.
You're right, but react doesn't apply just to chemicals.
I'm saying that's the exact process that single cells go through.
Isn't that an interesting?
It's a chemical process.
But that's the same process that our consciousness operates under.
Our consciousness operates under a specific neural structure with a specific electrochemical reactions that take place.
Yeah, yes, that can be reduced to chemistry, the same chemistry that guides the actions of the paramecium.
Not the same chemistry. It's a different chemistry.
But you know what I mean.
It's all chemical and it's all electromagnetic,
exactly.
actually.
That's what I'm saying.
Just as you have two chemicals that produce foam and two chemicals that produce a black compound, and they don't produce the same thing, you have a brain state that produces consciousness and other states that do not.
Right, but you have chemicals. But no, you see the trick. Chemicals result in human consciousness, resulting in human awareness. Chemicals result in a paramecium's consciousness that results in a paramecium's awareness.
We don't know that
it's the same line.
We don't know that it has no brain. We have no evidence that a paramecium.
You said the mechanism is important.
No,
the mechanism is
the mechanism of a brain is important to consciousness.
Can I get in here?
So you're saying wait a minute. So the universe doesn't exist because we don't know what created the Big Bang. We have no idea what the mechanism. So we can't say the universe exists.
Trick. Have you heard of epigenetics?
I know that organisms exist.
No, the universe. We don't have a mechanism for the Big Bang. You're saying in order for something to exist, we have to know that there's a mechanism for it. We don't have a mechanism for the universe.
I never said that.
I'm saying that. You're saying that you're saying for something to exist, to cause something, we have to understand that
we don't know that we don't know the mechanism for consciousness. We know that the brain produces consciousness, but we don't know the exact mechanism. But we know consciousness exists in brains.
But we're doing
we
the
have
same
that
thing.
because likewise we know the universe exists because we're in the universe.
Trick. What we're saying is chemistry guides both the paramecium and the human brain, right? That's the fundamental, and we can go to
chemistry. Yes, it's in parameciums, it's in brains, and it's in intestines.
And electricity.
Right. All right. So, Trick, follow this reasoning. Just as we don't know the mechanism by which the chemicals in our brain translate to a human consciousness, we don't know the mechanism by which a paramecium's chemicals translate into its consciousness.
We don't know it has consciousness.
If we're defining consciousness and awareness, intelligence, we do. There's evidence. There's evidence.
There's
evidence.
Can I get a word in?
Go ahead.
Look up cellular intelligence.
That's a great segue to what I'm trying to say. Have you ever heard of epigenetics? Are you familiar with epigenetics, Trick?
Yeah, I am.
It means, let's say basically there's been experiments that have been done that show that in the cells it's actually the cell wall that is responding to its environment and reacting and responding that actually dictates it. Basically, the environment affects the membrane, and it's the membrane itself, like a skin.
Basically, the environment turns on and off specific genes, basically,
and actually causes like mutations and beneficial mutations. You can take the cells that were lactose intolerant, and then they were able to adapt and survive, and because of the pressure from their environment. It all has to do. All I'm trying to say is environment actually reshapes the organism from the outside, from the external cell wall, and as it reacts, it actually reprograms itself to mutate and adapt to become suitable to whatever environment that is.
It doesn't reprogram itself to mutate. It turns
whatever
off,
words you want to use. You know the process I'm talking about, right?
It turns off specific genes or on specific genes.
Right.
That's all it does.
So all I'm saying, you don't see that as a level of intelligence? I mean, it doesn't have a brain.
Not at all. No, it
doesn't have a spinal cord. Doesn't have a
totally chemical process that has no intelligence to it.
You put a bunch of chemical processes together, and you have a life form. That's what constitutes a life form.
Not all life forms are intelligent.
Amalgamation of chemical processes.
You have plant life, and they're not intelligent. Just because something's a life form doesn't mean it's intelligent. No. Plants
communicate through their root system. They actually send out signals to each other. I don't think you've done the latest research, man. Like, we're not talking about consciousness. We're talking about a level of awareness.
I think we have to define intelligence, because I think what Trick is saying.
Awareness.
Awareness. Trick, what is your definition of intelligence?
Intelligence means that you can actually think about something intelligently.
Oh, wait a minute. So you're begging the question, because like if you're applying that to human beings, so like, intelligence is what human beings do. So you don't accept artificial intelligence. You don't accept any other intelligence, because you are defining intelligence as limited to human beings.
I think intelligence is part of cognition. You have to have cognition for intelligence.
Why? What is define cognition?
Well, because otherwise you have what's called artificial intelligence. so it's why we make those distinctions between
what do you mean by cognition? What's cognition?
All right, let me.
I gotta listen. Hold on. I gotta ask something. Trick, does life have intelligence? Life. Does
hold
life?
On, hold on, a second, guys. I gotta put you on mute for just a second.
I'd like to ask him if he believes life possesses intelligence, and if so, then like where does he draw the line? Where does he make the distinction between, you guys there, or are we all on mute?
Yeah, I'm here, and I've been listening.
I hear you. Poffo, let him come up with the definition of cognition.
My wife says I'm sounding too nasty to you guys. Am I sounding nasty?
No, you're good.
I wouldn't say that, but
we're
he
all
sounds
very impassioned.
I was gonna slow it down and say, Trick, are you okay? I don't want to stress you out. I don't want you.
No, my wife's like, all right, you're being too nasty. You're sounding too nasty. It's not productive.
I don't hear it. No, tell her we're fine with it.
I don't want you to think that we're both picking on you. I mean,
I don't think you're being any more nasty than we are. And we're playing football.
Well, I wasn't being nasty. I'm just listening, and this is very interesting, guys.
So I gotta mellow myself down so I don't get in trouble by the wife. Yeah.
He's intelligent.
Yeah, he's intelligent, whether he admits it or not.
Trick, would you say that life can be characterized? Is life intelligent? Life.
No, life in general, no. Certain life
in general is not
some
intelligent.
life is. Some life is.
Okay. Does life behave in a way that is conducive to its own sort of its own survival? Does it perpetuate itself in a semi-intelligent way?
Not necessarily, no.
You don't believe that life,
matter of fact,
responds and reacts like
a whole ton of life has died out just because it hasn't acted in the way that's most conducive.
No. I mean, I don't mean like the. I don't mean like the dead ends in evolution. I mean like in a general sense.
That's 90% of evolution. 90% of evolution is the dead ends.
Does life operate intelligently in terms of its own survival, meeting its own needs?
I'm telling you, 90% of evolution is the dead ends that don't do that.
In the life that exists currently right now, not the life.
Hold on. 90% of chemical experimentation leading to cures for illnesses, I would guess, lead to failures too. But it's an intelligent process.
And the 1 or 2% that finds the cure,
we don't have we don't
that it's intelligent.
We
don't
have evidence that evolution is intelligent. So we're back to the whole evidence thing.
I wasn't asking about that. I was asking about
we are evident. And we human beings are evidence that evolution is intelligent. In other words, because how could a non-intelligent evolution come up with intelligent human beings?
I would say that evolution
through a non-intelligent process.
I would say that evolution is a blind process, but the overall nature of existence itself, there's intelligence embedded in it because it brings about life. It brings about conscious life. And evolution
just because it brings about life doesn't mean it's intelligent. So we're back
what's
to
it? What's it in this equation? When you say it, what is it?
Just because, but what I don't know what I said for it.
You just said it. Just because it, and I was asking specifically what are you referring to as it?
Evolution.
Okay, I don't think evolution is intelligent. I think that the laws of nature. I think that the laws of nature themselves allow for all these things, and so I think that there is an intention.
Of course,
just
they have to allow for them if they exist. Like if they wouldn't exist if they didn't allow for them. So that doesn't really mean a whole lot.
By looking at the outcome, by looking at the conclusions, because it's an ongoing process, it's perpetual. By looking at the conclusions and the outcomes, and looking at the trajectory, you ascribe no intention whatsoever in all the complex, systems.
Right, because we know the theory of evolution doesn't require it. We know that the theory of evolution that produces that produces the complexity that you're talking about, though. You're talking about all this complexity.
Wait a minute, we don't know that, because the whole purpose, like, we began this talk and we didn't finish it by the pre-natural selection mutation process, the phenomes, and no, we haven't described that as a process. Well,
I'm saying
direction.
that this is what most evolutionary biologists say, is that it's not a teleological process. You don't require teleology for the process to happen.
All right, but we don't care about. In other words, like, there's a lot of academics believe in free will.
Right. So we could talk about it, but I agree with them because of the facts over evolution. So
thinking wider, I'm thinking broader, Trick. I'm saying that the laws of nature themselves, that's where the intelligence is embedded in. The potential is
yes,
in the
we can yes. In other words,
I keep you're hung up on evolution, but I agree with you that it's a blind random process because it doesn't know how it's going to end up, the starts and stops. But what I'm saying is the fact that things evolve in the first place, the fact that there is adaptation and that there is this process that's going on to begin with. Expand your vision for a minute and step back and say, why are these processes in effect at all? Why do the laws of nature even allow for this? That's what I'm saying.
The answer to that question is we don't know the reason. So if we don't know the reason, we shouldn't speculate.
But I would argue I don't think that it's wrong to speculate, and I don't think it's wrong to extrapolate from the evidence that's there.
Speculate, but you shouldn't believe something that you have no evidence for. So
we have evidence for it.
No, because we know that the process can happen without that teleology. We don't need the laws of physics to have intelligence.
Hold on. The process can happen without the production of life, without the production of conscious life, and yet it does. It does.
What?
The process could transpire and the process can unfold and transpire.
The fact that it does is irrelevant. So you could say it does. Everything does. Of course, it does, because that's the causal process that led to it. But that doesn't mean that there's something prior that has intelligence that invoked it.
All right. Then we're asking the question: Can order arise from disorder? Because I remember, like, that's when we left off with the last podcast.
Life is anti-entropic. I mean, the entropic principle, but then life goes against that. There's dark matter and dark energy are operating simultaneously.
Right.
No. If you're saying that, like, the law of entropy exists, that is order.
No.
It feeds into the order because more life comes about through the
law of entropy is that you get more disorder as you go along. But
no disorder. You're talking about, like, disorder in a different sense. In other words, there's an underlying order behind that disorder. Yes. So in other words, like, the laws of nature are an orderly process. I mean, the laws of nature
they go against entropy. So they go against entropy because of the natural selection process, and that's why we explain it.
The laws of nature, it depends on what we're applying entropy to. If we're applying it to the vastness of the universe, then it's entropy. Within the universe, there are certainly examples of things becoming more complex.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what life does, right?
Talking, it's us.
Right. Yeah,
so,
I agree.
But the laws of nature, the salient point is the laws of nature, manifest order. They impose order.
They manifest order
they
and chaos, but out of that chaos, more order in life comes out, like a forest fire, like burning down an entire forest, and then you have all this destruction. But then you have the nutrient-rich soil that allows for more life, and actually forests thrive like that, and that's the way the cycle continues, so that more trees grow and they grow healthier because they have.
So if we can't ascribe free will to ourselves, then again, like, our intelligence is really the causal result of whatever created the laws of nature.
The causal you don't use the word created. You don't need the word created there.
All right,
causal result
whatever transformed the singularity into the laws of nature that manifested this particular universe, that had everything that exists now was the potential for it was there already in place, because nothing has changed. The laws of nature have been in effect for 13.8 billion years.
I want you guys to just imagine a scenario for me, if you could. Imagine that the universe expands till it hits a certain point and then collapses, and then expands and then collapses. Now imagine that is a state that is just an eternal state. It never.
I don't have to imagine it. You're describing my ontology, Trick.
No, well, if you imagine, even though that's not the most. I mean, the scientific thing now is that we'll expand forever, and then all energy will disperse. But that's besides the point. If we imagine that, we know that we don't require hold on a second.
What he's describing, I would call respiration, just on a giant level, on a fractal level. That's what small organisms do, and that's what the universe is doing. It's transforming and inhaling and exhaling and recycling and regenerating. And
but under that scenario, there's nothing that started anything. So it just
Trick, you're right, because it is an eternal process. It's perpetual.
So when you say the laws of nature, there's nothing that started in that scenario. The laws of nature.
No, except in this particular configuration, the word you like to use, in this particular configuration, it's operating in this way. We know that this particular configuration of the laws of nature started at that point, at the Big Bang. But I don't believe that there was ever
but it could just be a flux going back and forth.
It is a flux. It's exactly what it is.
Then it doesn't require an intelligence in any point of that flux, except for that midpoint where humans
beings. If we human beings haven't like one iota of the intelligence to create a universe, how can we say that the universe, it hasn't been caused by intelligence?
Because it doesn't need intelligence to create it.
Why are you saying that? What's your rationale for saying it doesn't need
it? Because there's no reason to say it does need it. Because we know it could just be it could causally just expand.
Are you answering me?
If in other words, like if the universe, if we knew there was a human being, behind the universe, the creation of the universe, the causal whatever, then we'd say, oh yeah, it's an intelligent thing. So now you're saying because we don't know that there's a human being behind it, we can't say it's intelligent?
We can't say it's intelligent, right?
That doesn't make sense. That's promorphizing human intelligence.
No, I mean we have no
exactly what he's accusing us of.
My position, yeah, you guys are anthropomorphized. So
anthropocentralizing.
My position is we know that conscious life lives here on planet Earth. That's what we know consciousness is. We don't know that it was before the Big Bang. We don't know that it will continue to exist. The current theory is all energy eventually will run out in the universe, and there'd be no life that's supportable at some point.
Trick, the first law of thermodynamics refutes this. The first law of thermodynamics, Einstein's law of conservation of energy, is no.
Energy running out doesn't mean that the energy doesn't exist. It just means it all disperses in a same state, basically. So it's work is going to be run out. There'll be no way to do any work anymore because
all the work will have been done.
Hey guys, do you think you can wrap this up in 10 minutes? I'm running out of time, but I think that we'll end up doing a part 4.
I think we kind of went off on some tangents.
Really quick. The first law of thermodynamics is a version of the law of conservation of energy adapted for thermodynamic systems. The law of conservation of energy states that the total energy of an isolated system is constant. Energy can be transformed from one form to another, but it can neither be created nor destroyed. Yes. The first law is often formulated by stating that the change in the internal energy of a closed system.
Look at the heat depth of the universe. So look that one up. So when I'm talking about all energy being dispersed evenly, you're talking about all atoms
being dispersed, basically. So you have no more work that can be done.
I'm not talking about the future speculation of what's going to happen to the universe. I'm talking about the beginning of
Yeah,
what,
you guys aren't disagreeing, I don't think. I think you're saying the same thing.
I'm saying energy cannot be created or destroyed, and the potential energy, and with Newton's third law of motion,
Yes.
to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. An equal and opposite reaction. Equal means that same amount of energy and potential and creativity and everything that exists in this physical present reality was existent before the Big Bang. So
that's not what it means. That has to do with motion. So it has nothing to do with states.
And actually, I think my understanding is that the laws of nature, including the conservation laws, apply post Big Bang. I think we can't.
They don't actually. They only count. They only technically are within the universe. Our
That's
known
what I'm
universe.
saying. That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't. It doesn't mean that prior to the Big Bang there was.
This universe came from somewhere, and it's doing everything that it's doing. And all I'm saying is that, like, if you want to know why it's doing what it's doing, look at what it's doing. What the end result, the consequences, that gives you the answer to why it's doing it, and that tells you that there is intelligence embedded in the laws of nature themselves.
No, it doesn't. We could look at what it's doing, but we can't infer that there was intelligence there. You can. It could be just
the intelligence. Okay, hold on. So the intelligence that created your intelligence is not intelligent.
The intelligence that created my intelligence is my parents, which was intelligent.
Going all the way back to
But they don't have a free will, so it wasn't really their intelligence.
Going all the way back.
It's still their intelligence. It's just it wasn't freely chosen.
Processes and the chemical reactions and the mitosis and all the genetic encoding and everything that's in DNA and everything that's transpired that brought about this incredible intelligence that you have is non-intelligent.
We have no evidence that it is intelligent. That's what I'm saying.
Except the intelligence that it creates.
That isn't evidence that it is intelligent.
It creates intelligence, but it's completely non-intelligent.
But I think
right, because we know that the theory of evolution, it doesn't require it. It's a non-teleological causal.
That's one truncated.
No, it's not. It's totally related to the consciousness that you're talking about.
Poffo is saying that, like, with human intelligence, we define something intelligent not because we humans do it, but because of what certain characteristics of what we define as intelligent. Another complexity, order, design.
No, that's not how we define intelligence. So complexity, I mean, we define intelligence based on our own intelligence, basically.
But wait a minute.
We understand that we're intelligent, and we understand when we define that within that compound.
All right, so like, we try to pour, like a certain liquid into a glass that's way too small to contain it. I think we define that as not intelligent.
No, we would define that as intelligent, yeah.
As not intelligent.
No, if we're doing it for a reason, then that's an intelligent process.
No. We're not. That's what I'm saying. We're not using our mind. We're just like not using intelligence. So like it's just completely unintelligent to pour too much liquid into a small glass. But
no, it has nothing to do with that. So if we're thinking, I'm going to pour this into this glass and it's going to fit into the glass, and it doesn't because we miscalculated the amount of water, it's still a intelligent process.
All right, but even with that,
guys,
we're defining. All right.
Okay, we got to wrap it up.
We got to wrap it up. We're gonna have to do more parts to this. So let's see. How should we close this?
20-part series.
Yeah.
Let's close it. Part 4 next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I said,
I don't know. We might have to go on something else next time.
Yeah. Yes. We shall continue this madness in the future.
We'll come back to this. Yeah.
As for now, thank you for listening and goodbye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.